Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this hybrid meeting of the Scrutiny and Audit Committee. And I would remind all attendees that this meeting is being recorded and webcast live on the Council's YouTube channel. I've agreed the attendance of some members remotely and would remind all remote attendees to mute their microphones when not speaking. For any members of the public watching, please note that all the public committee reports, including details of specific recommendations, are available on the Council's website. I think before we start the formal part of the meeting, I think it's probably appropriate to thank Councillor Fotheringham for his role in chairing this committee over the last 3 years. Obviously, I wasn't sitting on the committee, but I did dip in and watched a couple of committees, and I think they were being chaired in a very efficient and competent fashion. So thanks to Councillor Fotheringham for that. I'm not exactly new to Scrutiny and Audit, having spent 10 years on it in the past, so I will be hoping to keep up the good work when I'm chairing the committee. So we'll move on to apologies and substitutions. Have we got any apologies today?
Yes, Convener, an apology from Councillor Gall with Councillor Stewart substituting. Okay,
thank you. Any declarations of interest and statements of transparency?
Sorry, I didn't have my mic on there. It was in regards to item 6, report 18025. I've had discussions with residents on that, but I'll stay in the room.
Okay, thanks for clarifying. And Councillor Bell.
Similar, also caught in the hop there. I declared its declaration of transparency the last time on item 6 because I knew one of the delegates. I still know one of the delegates, but haven't had any conversations whatsoever about this matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So that's all the declarations of interest and transparency. Okay, the minute of the previous meeting, and that relates to the committee of the 22nd of April. A couple of people who were there willing to propose and second it. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the scrutiny items, and item 4 is the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service quarterly report, and I think we have Alan Lowe from Scottish Fire and Rescue in the chamber to present.
Thank you and good afternoon, Convener and committee members. Firstly, I'd like to pass on the apologies of our local senior officer, Brian Todd, who cannot be in attendance today. I'm sure the committee members will be aware by now of the significant incident that we had in Perth over the weekend, and our local senior officer has been called to meet the First Minister in Perth today to go over some of the incident with him. So in his absence, I would like to, before I go on to my Q4 report, I would like to just deliver a brief LSO strategic update for the Scrutiny Committee. And it's in relation to the Service Delivery Review Programme from Scottish Fire and Rescue Service. The primary aim of this programme is to ensure our operational resources, our people, stations and appliances are matched to operational risk and demand across Scotland. At the end of April, we convened a wide group of stakeholders, including SFRS staff, trade unions, partner agencies and members of the public, to evaluate a short list of potential change options. This event, known as the Balanced Room, was the evaluation of the final list of 23 change option proposals to help inform what would progress to formal public consultation in the summer. The term Balanced Room refers to the fact that the majority of those scoring the options must be from out with the SFRS to ensure fairness and transparency. The process is now concluded, and following further review and approval by SFRS Board at the end of May, all proposals will now progress to formal public consultation during the summer. 2 of the 23 proposals being taken to public consultation affect Balmossy Fire Station. This marks the culmination of several years of work and follows our Shaping Our Future Service, Your Say pre-consultation exercise conducted last year, during which we invited views from all 32 local authorities across Scotland. Input from that process has been vital in shaping the direction of the current proposals, and by making changes to how we operate, we can free up our staff and resources to invest more in other critical areas such as prevention and training. Our service delivery review has involved robust impact assessments undertaken to inform our understanding of a wide variety of outcomes. This includes detailed simulation modelling, which has been used to identify changes in incident demand levels of surrounding stations and incident response times within each locality. We're committed to engaging openly and transparently with staff, elected members, local authorities, partners and communities throughout this process. Our public consultation exercise will run for 12 weeks, and we anticipate that this will launch at the end of June. More information will be published on our website, firescotland.gov.uk, at that time, and drop-in sessions will be arranged to afford the opportunity for face-to-face discussions. The local senior officer will also provide all elected members with a communication over the next week to formally inform you of the public consultation. That concludes the brief from the local senior officer, so I will now go on to summarise the performance report from SFRS. The performance report at today's committee contains information relating to Q4 from 1st of January 2025 to the 31st of March 2025 in support of the scrutiny of local service delivery. I'll now give a brief summary of the highlights from the report for the Angus area. During the reporting quarter, SFRS attended 325 incidents across Angus. Whilst this is a 20% increase from the 23-24 Q4, it remains a 4% reduction from the three-year average, which was 339. Again, false alarms were the most attended incident type, totalling a combined 127 call-outs, which equates to 39% of all incidents attended. You'll see on page 4 the trend charts, which documents 5 of the KPIs in our report. And moving on, we attended 99 fires, ranging from domestic, non-domestic and outdoor incidents. And looking at accidental dwelling fires, firstly, of the 16 accidental dwelling fires during Q4, 10 were due to a cooking appliance, with damage being recorded at 4 incidents as having spread past the room of origin of the fire. 10 of these incidents were dealt with by disconnecting the fuel supply, removing from the heat source, or required no firefighting actions. We continue to undertake post-domestic incident response interventions following any accidental dwelling fire. These comprise of home fire safety visits and advice to prevent further incidents, and we want to target those most vulnerable, particularly around unintentional harm in the home. Moving on from that, there were happily 0 accidental dwelling fire fatalities for both Q4 and for the reporting fiscal year. There were 3 ADF casualties for Q4, which is marginally above the previous 3-year average of 2. The 3 casualties were from 2 separate incidents, one where a casualty was treated for mild smoke inhalation on scene by ambulance staff, and another where 2 elderly residents were taken to Ninewells Hospital for treatment of mild smoke inhalation, one of whom was also treated for burn injuries to the lower limbs. ADF casualties for the reporting fiscal year was 19, which is higher than the previous 3-year average of 10. Crews continue to carry out home fire safety visits, and where we receive referrals from partner agencies also. And we continue to attend multi-agency case referrals for vulnerable members of our communities. Moving on to non-domestic fires, we attended 8 non-domestic fires in Q4, which is marginally above the 3-year average of 7. The figure for the reporting fiscal year was 24 incidents, which is below the 3-year average of 29, and the Q4 incidents were limited to the item ignited first or the floor of origin, requiring minimal fire service intervention. Of the 8 incidents, 3 were deliberate and 5 accidental. Following non-domestic fires, our dedicated protection officers audit relevant premises to ensure they're complying with their statutory responsibilities and to give advice to prevent further incidents. Moving on to deliberate fires, there were 47 deliberate fires in Angus during Q4, and this is a significant increase on the previous 3-year average of 23. 15 of these were primary fires, which is an increase on the 3-year average, and 8 of the primary fires were vehicle fires. 2 of the deliberate fires were within dwellings, and the remaining 5 in non-residential premises, including a significant fire in a disused church. 32 of these deliberate fires were secondary fires, again an increase on the 3-year average. 10 of these incidents were refuse fires, mainly loose refuse and wheelie bins, with the remaining 22 comprised of outdoor vegetation and scrubland. SFRS adopt a proactive approach to deliberate fires, primarily around youth engagement and education, in order to reduce the number of these incident types. These initiatives include a targeted approach, working with local schools along with national campaigns during summer months to reduce antisocial behaviour. To combat these deliberate fires, and in particular secondary fires involving grass crops, rubbish, etc., we continue to engage in a multi-agency approach. Our local authority liaison officer is part of an established partnership team. As part of their daily work, information on secondary fires is shared between partners to provide ongoing intelligence, identify perpetrators and establish appropriate interventions. Recent engagement has focused on the ward of Forfar and District as part of a focused approach on the most prevalent area of deliberate fire setting through Q4. Fire safety support and education for youths who have been identified as responsible for some of these incidents, and boots on the ground initiatives have been involved in this. Further initiatives have now been planned for Arbroath East and Lunan District for our next location-focused intervention initiatives, to educate on the dangers of deliberate fire setting and potential consequences for not only individuals but for the wider community. Moving on to non-fire casualties, SFRS attended 97 non-fire related incidents in Q4, which involved 13 non-fatal casualties and 2 fatal casualties. Road traffic collisions contributed to 9 of the non-fatal casualties, with more detail provided in the following section. The 2 fatal casualties in this area were from an assist other agency and an effect and entry to a premises, where SFRS crews will provide access to a premises for another agency. In relation to the 4 non-fatal casualties that were not involved in RTCs, one incident involved a gorge rescue with an extrication and removal to hospital for serious injuries. One incident involved a precautionary check by ambulance crews due to a faulty appliance, and the remaining 2 incidents involved effecting entry to a premises for another agency. In relation to the non-fatal casualties, 12 of these casualties required hospital treatment, 5 of which were serious injuries and 7 for slight injuries, with 1 casualty requiring first aid or a precautionary check at the incident. In terms of RTC casualties, our SFRS attended 18 RTCs in Q4, which is above the 3-year average of 13. The number of RTCs attended in the reporting fiscal year was 52, which is below the 3-year average of 57. Sadly, there was 1 fatal RTC in the reporting fiscal year, but there were no fatal RTCs within Q4. There were 9 non-fatal casualties in Q4, 4 of which were taken to hospital with serious injuries and 5 with slight injuries. 4 casualties required to be extricated by fire service personnel, whilst a further 3 were supported or carried out of the vehicle. As far as these incidents are concerned, there was no geographic concentration of the incidents identified. Moving on to the next category, SFRS attended 43 UFAS incidents during Q4, which is considerably lower than the 3-year average of 79. As stated in previous reports, this is due to the implementation of the Time for Change policy implemented by SFRS in 2023. Again, this is reflected in the total for the reporting fiscal year, which is 138 incidents compared to the previous 3-year average of 333. The 43 incidents here must be taken in context of as 1 single premises caused 16 of these activations over the quarter, which gave us a rise to a small spike in this area. Our fire safety enforcement team and our operational crews locally worked with the duty holder to advise on preventing reactivations of a faulty alarm panel at this premises. The issue has been greatly reduced, with only 2 activations for the current quarter at that particular premises. UFAS incidents impact on SFRS in terms of creating unnecessary blue light journeys, redirecting resources from activities such as community safety engagement, and creating disruption for businesses. So the reduction in this area continues to be welcomed. Finally, moving on to the community safety and engagement and partnership working over the quarter. Section 10 of the report highlights some of the community safety engagement and partnership working initiatives and activity that has been delivered in Q4, a brief description of which I'll provide just now. SFRS Angus Community Action Team and crews continue to be fully engaging with all aspects of the community, delivering home fire safety visits. Our local authority liaison officer and community safety advocates continue to attend partnership meetings with a multitude of groups in Angus in a collaborative approach to working towards better social outcomes for our communities. We continue to deliver CPR sessions to secondary schools, providing an excellent life skill for our young people to learn, whilst encouraging confidence and an outlook to improve employability for them in the future. Our community action team continues to assist persons at risk, issuing such things as fire retardant bedding and carrying out joint home fire safety visits with partner agencies. A total of 80 home fire safety visits have been carried out in Angus by our operational personnel and a further 40 by our community action team. Our team continues to work with partner agencies providing vital support to vulnerable persons through providing and reviewing referrals. This includes providing fire safety support and education to young persons involved in fire raising. And just one point to note at the end of the report, our latest report does not include information on fire safety enforcement activity for the quarter, and that is due to a minor fault with our new reporting software. I can confirm, however, that 14 fire safety audits were carried out across Angus in Q4, and that included 4 care homes and 6 hospitals. It's hoped that the report for the following quarter will include full details of fire safety enforcement activity. And that concludes the report, Convener. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much indeed. Questions to Mr Lowe. Councillor Bell to start with.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you very much for that report. And just before I go into my question, I would like to extend my huge gratitude to both the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service and Police Scotland colleagues who've responded so quickly to the issues that I raised in the recent good weather around party campers, shall we say, in the Lintraith and backwater areas, particularly when so many warnings had been issued around the risk of wildfires with that dry spell. It was incredibly reckless behaviour, and everyone, including Scottish Water and the Council, responded really quickly. And I know officers visited the Lintraithen area on Friday night, so I'm really grateful for that. And my question around that is, what are the planned activities over the summer? Because we know this is going to be a recurring situation, so it would be helpful if you could maybe describe what you've got planned to help reduce the risk of those fires. And in terms of the UFAS data, you've already answered my question around the high number in one particular area. So thanks for the detail on that, Alan.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Bell. Was that in relation to the incidents in Lintraithen Loch area in particular? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So we have taken a partnership approach with our colleagues in Police Scotland to address the issue in the area. We have targeted inspections from our community action team and Police Scotland to do a joint approach, focusing on weekends when we attend the locus, just to liaise and engage with anybody who is involved in wild camping, just to stress the dangers of potentially antisocial behaviour and lighting fires in the area after such a dry period of weather, but also to engage in another aspect of what we plan over the summer, which is safety around bodies of water. It's another initiative that our community action teams will be following up this summer to try and highlight and get across to people coming into the area, travelling into the area and using the facilities around our bodies of water, just to engage with them to encourage safe practices and being safe around the water to prevent fire. So we're having a focus in that area on reducing both any fire raising and any accidental and unintentional harm around the water bodies.
Okay, thank you. So I now have Councillor Stewart, Councillor Devine, Councillor Cowdy and Councillor Proctor. So Councillor Stewart first.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, it was just in regard to works that you've already done in Forfar, and you're going to be doing works in Arbroath, I think you said, in regards to fire safety engagements. Do you have plans to do that in Montrose as well, because I'm quite concerned. Obviously, in recent weeks we've had a few wildfires, if that's what we call them, down the golf course. There was also another one down at Cannaber, which I was out there walking the dog, and I couldn't for the life of me understand how the fire brigade could get down to that area at all, because there's just nowhere to get down. And also, one thing of concern that's coming, I suppose it's coming to all the Montrose councillors in recent times, is the old Montrose Infirmary, which had an appearance from your colleagues on Sunday again, and that's causing a bit of an issue, I think, locally.
Councillor Stewart, thank you for your question there. Just to give you some reassurance, our community action teams are continually viewing and monitoring any hotspots for secondary fires, fire raising. So Montrose, the area around the golf course, will be on our radar to engage with the youth locally. It's something I'll take forward personally myself to have a look at that area over the coming weeks, and I'll discuss that with our community action teams. As far as the disused building at Montrose Infirmary is concerned, that was brought to my attention very recently, that we were in attendance again recently, and I was aware of an incident that we had previously in Q4. As a result of that, our community action team and our local fire safety enforcement officer for Angus has already been involved and communicated with Angus Building Standards and other partners, and has convened a meeting regarding that location next week. So I will be hearing back on the progress of the meeting and hope to take further preventative measures to make sure that there are no further trends of incidents at the Montrose Infirmary building.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener, and thank you, Alan, for that very detailed report, and especially around all the preventative work that your officers do. We really appreciate that. My question, however, is a bit like Councillor Stewart. It's the concern being raised for the number of fires in Forfar, particularly burning of wheelie bins, litter bins, and that obviously has a cost for the council, who are now installing metal bins when required. And I know you're tackling it through education, but I was just wondering do you know if any perpetrators have been identified in this instance?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Devine. I can confirm that the perpetrators for some of the fire raising activity in Forfar were identified, and in conjunction with our colleagues in Police Scotland, we have engaged with three young people within the Forfar area and have carried out fire safety support and education with these youngsters. I have been given feedback from our teams regarding these engagements, and have been it's heartening to hear that the young people involved with the engagement have they've conversed with us and have had it's had a positive influence on them. So we are sure that will lead to a reduced number of incidences of that nature in Forfar. So I can assure that we have taken proactive engagement with young people who have been identified, and have taken a positive course of action to prevent it happening again.
Thank you very much. That's great to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Cowdy.
Thank you very much. That rolls really nicely into my question, the education sessions that you talked about. I just wondered if there's data evidence on a wider scale around, do those sessions work? And is there any alternative approach that might be taken by other forces, whether in Scotland, in the rest of Britain, or elsewhere? I just wondered if you've got evidence other than anecdotal, as you've just put to us. Thank you.
Again, Councillor Cowdy, thank you for your question. And to answer that, I would say that one of the things that we'll look at to see if these initiatives are working is have we kind of reduced the impact of these types of incidences in any geographic location? That is one way that we will look at these initiatives. I would admit that it's a challenge going forward for our colleagues in the community planning partnerships as to identify just how impactful these kind of initiatives are. I think part of that kind of feedback I'll take is from the fire safety support and education advisors that deal with the youths. They'll generally get a feeling for how engaging the young people have been with them and the impact that has with them as well. So, yeah, to answer the question, it can be quite difficult to put quantitative data to how effective any individual strategy is, but we do look at key performance indicators of these types of incidents in geographic locations to have a look at the value of their effectiveness.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And now, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Convener. More or less the same as what Councillor Cowdy just spoke about, is the engagement with young people and the measuring of the effect of that, the reduction of incidents. And I think you've kind of answered the question to Councillor Cowdy. And the other thing, I'd just like to mirror Councillor Bell's comment about the backwater and Luntrathen areas. This is a perennial problem, and I do hope that there is a link up between Scottish Fire and Rescue and also with Police Scotland on that matter, because, as I say, it's quite perennial and causes quite a lot of distress for local residents.
Yep, thank you. And I can confirm that in respect to the incidents at Luntrathen historically, that we are proactively engaging, as I described to Councillor Bell, around that area, and we are working with our colleagues in Police Scotland to do all we can to prevent them happening in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And then Councillor Shepherd.
Thanks, Convener, and thanks to the Fire Service for this report. I do like the detail with the breakdowns by ward. Just to comment on the deliberate fires, we've got Arbroath East and Lunan with 12 and Arbroath West with 5. Arbroath East is a smaller ward, a smaller size and a smaller population, but double the amount of fires. Just with local knowledge, I know that Arbroath East is generally speaking, a more deprived area, and I'm just thinking, like, these education sessions, I'm sure they'll help with it. But is there, if we can notice a trend that deprivation is an issue in starting these deliberate fires, is there a way we can intervene earlier or work with associated services? Because I can't help but notice that it seems to be a bigger issue in the deprived wards in Angus from the report. Thank you.
Again, thank you for your question. I'll see if we can provide some context to that. As I alluded to in the Q4 report, we do have a geographical focus on the frequency of the incidents in certain locations. And you'll see from the report that the Arbroath East and Lunan ward was the second highest of the deliberate fire settings. So we are, having targeted the Forfar area, we are now targeting the Arbroath East area. So schools such as Wardykes, Hayeshead and Arbroath Academy will be getting liaised with our community action teams to see if we can do some preventative work there. And the second part of your question, I would say we are doing work within our community planning partnership groups to try and correlate our data as much as possible so that we can try and identify certain locations and collaborate and use our resources together to the best effect going forward. So it's something that we hope to keep progressing, working with our partners to perhaps maybe solve some wider social issues than just a deliberate fire setting, and doing that together with the help of our other partners.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions. Any comments from any members? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Mr Lowe, for coming along to present the report, and also for availing yourselves for us select members prior to this meeting as well. I'm sure my Forfar colleagues will agree with me that for deliberate fires, being top of the list is certainly not a place where we'd want to be, and it's disappointing to see that. I am encouraged, however, with the explanation that you've given, the work that you've done proactively to try and stop that, and all the other bits and bobs that you'd mentioned when you delivered the report. So hopefully the next time you're here we'll see us a lot closer to the bottom of that list, and it'll show that the hard work that you've done has paid off, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, well, thanks very much. Mr. Lowe, you're going to stay on until after the police report. Yeah, that's grand. Okay, we're now handing over to item. Okay, right, we're asked to note and comment on the reports, which we've done. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the Police Scotland, item 5, Angus Local Policing and its Chief Superintendent Russell. And you're in Perth, I gather, today online, and we've got your colleague in the chamber too.
Yeah, good afternoon, convener, and thanks to everyone for facilitating our online attendance this afternoon. As with my fire colleagues, we've been somewhat committed over the course of the weekend with the tragic incidents over in Perth. So my apologies for not being in the chamber this afternoon. However, Chief Inspector Ewan is there, and I'll hand over to her very shortly to take us through the report. I'm delighted to present the Q4 report for Angus. And as I said, Chief Inspector Ewan will take us through that report in some more detail, but members will have noted some significant activity across the quarter in terms of police activity and significant partnership approaches, which I'm delighted to report on. Of course, more than happy to take questions once the Chief Inspector's taken us through the report. And happy, of course, to highlight any other areas that are not documented within it. So, convener, that's probably it from me this afternoon. Thank you, and I'll pass over to Chief Inspector Ewing, if that's okay.
Okay, that's great. So over to Chief Inspector Ewing, who's in the chamber. Thank you.
Afternoon, convener and committee members. I don't intend to go through the whole report line by line this afternoon. However, there is a fair bit of content worthy of highlighting. So starting to work our way through the performance on a page, at page 32, we'll start there and provide a bit of context around each of these headings as we move through the document up to page 36. So starting with the Group 4 offences covering antisocial behaviour and disorder incidents, we've seen a slight increase in this area. However, we're still below the 5-year average, and I'm also acutely aware that there will be incidents that go unreported in this category, but with continued community engagements, we're seeking out opportunities to understand and tackle these issues within our local communities. Our community policing team continue to respond to ongoing and emerging issues. I mentioned at the last meeting about a rise in the number of fire raisings, which was obviously just been covered by my colleague here in the fire service. So we continue to see a spate of fires in the open. However, a number of youth were positively identified, as he mentioned, and they've been reported to the appropriate partners, and our community teams continue to engage with SFRS and Hillcrest Futures in respect of appropriate diversionary projects. Also following on from our last meeting, I attended community groups in Montrose, specifically in the Boroughfields area. I've addressed and resolved a number of the complaints raised on my initial arrival, and my community team are engaging with residents and partners to continue to offer reassurance and disrupt individuals who continue to commit crimes and acts of antisocial behaviour. And there's more details around that specific engagement documented on page 37. Moving into Group 1, the crimes of violence. We did have one murder during the period, but as I covered in the report, this occurred in Arbroath and was contained within a domestic setting, with the perpetrator being quickly apprehended and put to court with no wider threat to the public. We're seeing an overall reduction in our assault categories, and as documented, there were 8 serious assaults in this quarter, which was a reduction in 4 from the previous period, and all were detected. There was a large geographical spread of these offences across Angus, and only 2 out of the 8 involved weapons. In respect of the robberies within quarter 4, there were 13, which is an increase of 4. However, we still have a good detection rate sitting at 76.92, and I'm hopeful that will continue to improve with the 3 undetected inquiries that are still under investigation. I've previously provided more context around the robberies and hopefully reassurance in the respect of individuals involved in this crime type being known to one another and usually motivated by substance use, and this continues to be the case. The vast majority of our communities will not fall victim of a random robbery, and CID take ownership of these inquiries to ensure consistency of practice while also improving support to victims with referrals into partners. Moving into the public protection, over quarter 4, overall Group 2 crimes, including rape and domestic abuse, have increased in comparison to last year, but are currently on par with the 5-year average. It should be borne in mind that a number of these are DASA offences, which is a proactive approach to potential victims, and that every recorded crime is not necessarily indicative of the number of victims. It's also important to remember that these figures include new reports of non-recent incidents, with the term non-recent meaning those occurred in the last 12 months but only being reported now. We have a fantastic workforce in this area and strong partnership, which has improved our support to victims and likely offers more direct routes into engagement and reporting of incidents that might have previously gone unreported. Detection rates are improving, and this demonstrates that processes in Angus to target perpetrators are working well. I've also explored some of the sexual offending figures as a result of questions raised at our last meeting, and I was hopeful that Detective Chief Inspector Jennifer Reid would be here from the Public Protection team, but I don't think she's managed to dial in. She was going to be around for any additional supplementary questions that might come following my report. I covered this on page 35 when I was asked specifically around demographics of victims and perpetrators. And it does appear that a high proportion of our victims in Angus are under the age of 16, with females more likely to be the victims and males the perpetrators. Sexual assaults, rape and indecent communications are the most prevalent crime types within this group. And current year to date, there have been 167 Group 2 crimes with victims under the age of 16, with a detection rate of 66%. 27 of these reported cases specifically related to indecent images of children, which sees enforcement from specialist teams, and the nature of these crimes lead to a higher detection rate, which currently sits at 89%. It's clear that the amount of focused prevention and intervention work with young people in Angus is having a positive impact, and despite the high number of victims, we are encouraged that there appears to be more confidence in this age group to report crimes. There is always wider context to consider in this area, with there potentially being multiple offences attributed to the same victim, and also those engaging in consensual activities. However, due to their age, crimes are recorded with reporting through parents and carers. We will continue to work with the Violence Against Women and Girls Network to focus on education, promoting positive behaviours, role modelling and culture where behaviour is challenged. Moving on to page 40, as requested by Councillor Cowdy, I have included some focus in the report on wildlife crime. All I will highlight is that there have been 5 wildlife crimes recorded in this quarter which related to fishing and snare offences, and we have not seen a reoccurrence of these offences since they were recorded. However, community officers continue to engage with locals and will proactively address any behaviours that are a threat to our local wildlife. Also documented in that section are a number of national campaigns which run Scotland-wide. Moving on to page 41, tackling acquisitive crime. Whilst it's noted that reported housebreakings to dwellings is slightly up on last year, it's encouraging that detection rates have improved from currently sitting at 40.91% compared to 26.67% from Q4 last year. A check of current undetected crime shows that there are a number which remain under investigation, and it's anticipated that this detection rate will improve. There were 31 motor vehicle crimes recorded in Q4, which is down from 51 recorded the previous quarter, and which is considerably down from the 68 recorded in Q2. This is also a reduction of 25 compared to Q4 last year. As we have highlighted previously, there does continue to be a trend of individuals travelling from other areas to commit acquisitive crime in Angus and other rural communities, and a considerable amount of work is carried out in relation to this crime type, with some notable offenders being apprehended during the previous reporting period, which has brought about a positive impact on the crimes being committed. I'd just like to draw your attention to the good work noted on page 43, whereby in March 25, a theft HB occurred in Piper Dam where 2 high-value cars were stolen, totalling over £100,000. Uniformed officers and CID quickly linked the thefts to potential suspects in Edinburgh known for similar targeted thefts, and such quick collaborative work was carried out between Angus CID and Edinburgh CID, resulting in both vehicles being recovered in Queensferry a short time after the crime. There remains positive lines of inquiries and links to further crimes in Edinburgh, but this would not have been possible without the good work of officers both locally and out with the division. Shoplifting offences continue to show significant increase. This trend is replicated across the division and even nationally, sitting at 768 recorded offences, which is a large increase from last year to date and the 5-year average. However, on a more positive note, detection rates are continuing to improve, and alcohol continues to be the most frequently stolen item, as previously reported. A significant number of these crimes are attributed to a low number of high tariff repeat offenders. We continue to focus a significant amount of prevention work in this area, engaging with retailers, carrying out robust crime prevention advice, target hardening and encouraging them to take action to safeguard their premises. We've also been requesting criminal ASBOs on reported cases. However, to date, none have been issued by the courts. Police Scotland recognises the national increase in shoplifting offences and has responded by setting up a retail task force. This team aims to provide additional resource to local areas for a short, intensified period of time to strengthen the collective protection against retail crime and mitigate against the impact of retail crime and stop acquisitive crime by bringing perpetrators to justice. We have recently made bids to this task force once it is up and running, and with a view to it being able to provide support to us locally and make a notable impact in Angus. Moving on to road safety on page 47, as reads, the Angus area has suffered 3 fatalities for the period which was under review, and 2 of which were due to medical episodes. There have been 8 persons seriously injured due to road traffic collisions over Q4. Road policing officers assisted by divisional staff have carried out several days of actions with DVSA on the A19 near Forfar, where both commercial and agricultural vehicles have been stopped and checked with various offences dealt with. We have also had road policing days of actions carried out by our local community policing teams in Montrose, whereby a mini moto was seized and various road traffic offences reported, and also no insurance charge resulting in a vehicle being seized. A speeding initiative was carried out in Ferryden E92 after concerns were raised regarding speeding, with 1 female charged with a speeding offence. And the Forfar and Kirriemuir community policing team have also continued to take a proactive approach to road safety during this quarter, with a number of motorbikes and cars having been seized. Operation Challenge is being planned for the summer months, which is a multi-agency operation targeting the antisocial and illegal use of off-road motorcycles and similar. This will run across Angus, and we will ensure that there is social media messaging to support this, to highlight our activities to the wider public. As always, our report contains a lot more information around all of the above and some additional focus on our early intervention and prevention activities in education settings across Angus, ensuring we deliver on the Chief Constable's 2030 vision of safer communities, less crime, supported victims and a thriving workforce. By means of a local update, page 46 highlights the roll out of our body-worn video here locally in the division. This has come with some positive feedback being received from the public, the Crown Office and officers themselves. Albeit it's been a time-consuming process in these early stages while officers adapt to the functionalities of the system, but we are already seeing clear benefits in court and dealing with complaints, leading to much quicker and reliable resolutions. Thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much for a very full and comprehensive report. I've got Councillor Bell, Councillor Craig, Councillor Proctor, Councillor Stewart, in that order. So, Councillor Bell.
Thank you very much, and thank you both for presenting this very full report, and apologies for not seeing this at the start of the Fire and Rescue Service report, but I'm sure the whole committee, our thoughts are with the people affected by the awful fire in Perth, and that includes our emergency workers. So I'm really grateful for that. Thank you. So thanks for the more in-depth coverage of the sexual crime element there. And it's made me more curious, which is probably not a shock to anyone. A couple of things. Talk about most of the victims are under the age of 16, and that makes me wonder about the demographics of the perpetrators in terms of perhaps peer-to-peer, family relationships, or grooming by older males, and also around indecent communications. we know we've got issues with mobile phones in schools, and I just wondered, 2 points here. Is a lot of that peer-to-peer in schools or not? And also, is it difficult to get access through the platform providers to evidence? And how is the industry responding to increasing need, I think, of this kind of evidence gathering? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. Yeah, I can confirm it is the majority of the offending is peer-to-peer age-related offences in relation to the demographics between the victims and the perpetrators. And also with the phones, there is a real mix between it being peer-to-peer sharing of indecent images between that teenage age group, 14 to 16-year-olds, and also offences where there are older individuals looking to groom younger victims, and that's something that we can continue to do a lot of education around in schools and with the Violence Against Women network as well. In respect of phones in schools continuing to be a challenging issue for us, and it is something that's a much bigger and more complex issue around these platforms and children having access to these platforms.
In terms of going to the platform providers for evidence, perhaps, to, you know, if you need to contact them and they're based in America, for example, how difficult is that to get their cooperation? Thanks.
Yeah, that's something we've got cyber-trained officers who would specialise in that area and are able to link in with our National Crime Agency and take investigations forward on that front. But yeah, no, we do have means to carry out investigations when they're like worldwide platforms.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. I think mine is a two-part question, if you'd permit me. It's around the new driver scheme and the presentation that's been delivered. So the first part is I'd be quite keen to see that presentation if it comes in a slide format, and if it's possible to share that with myself or any other elected member that may wish to, if that would be possible. And the second part to the question is I'm aware that there are other police forces throughout the UK, notably Durham Constabulary. They had put together a video that they shared through their social media that involved a lorry RTC with a fatality, and within that video they created they had the cooperation of the lorry driver involved as well as other vehicles drivers that were involved in the aftermath of that to put together, and as you've noted in your report, as a hard-hitting video that was shared for educational purposes in schools and things within their constabulary. Do Police Scotland, do they have any videos, or have they created any videos of a similar kind of nature to that as a way of putting that hard-hitting message about road safety, whether that be phones, seat belts, and alcohol and things?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so first of all, the new driver scheme, that's delivered throughout our education settings by our road policing officers. They go into colleges, high schools to catch that 17 to 20 age group to speak to them regarding that scheme, and that's something I can certainly ask if presentations can be shared, or if you'd like to join them at one of their presentations that they're doing locally here in Angus. So I will take that action away. In respect of messaging, hard-hitting messaging, we do have campaigns that again our specialist road traffic road policing unit will deliver, and we've got age-appropriate material in respect of, we've mentioned there about the junior road safety, and it goes right up through to that, in young people who are starting to drive and the drink driving and the consequences of that. So there is some messaging out there, and Safe Drive Stay Alive is one of the campaigns that's used frequently with our young people.
Thank you, Councillor Proctor.
Thank you, Convener. My question is really about the ASBOs, the ASBO that I mentioned on page 37. There hasn't really been any in Angus. Now, Is that because of the Planet Youth, you know, the pilot you've got going in the Kirriemuir and Forfar area? Is that having an effect? And is there a sort of a criterion where, you know, before you can actually serve an advert on someone?
Thank you for your question. Yes, so it's a bit of a lengthy process. It can be gathering information and intelligence and credible reports around compiling reports to go to the court for antisocial behaviour orders. But it's something that we're working closely with our council colleagues, that wherever appropriate and where it merits it, depending on what the antisocial behaviour issues are, that if we can proceed down that route, then we speak to our council colleagues to investigate that.
Thank you. I mean, on the point that Councillor Gregg made about the safety messages, there used to be a roadshow that used to be held in Forfar at the Reid Hall, where we had the Scottish Fire and Rescue, the ambulance and yourself, put on a very, very good, hard-hitting message to people from all the schools, secondary schools were invited to attend. And I saw young people sitting there, you know, it had a great effect on them. Is that still ongoing, or is it been sort of done away with?
Yeah, no, it did. There was a bit of a break in that particular event happening just, I think, after COVID. It didn't resume. Yeah. However, we have since had that, I think it was up and running last year, Safe Angus it's called now, and branded as, but now they're not at the Reid Hall. I think they just take it into the individual school settings and do it by year groups, but it is still something that runs just in a new format.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. I would agree with Councillor Proctor that these were extremely hard-hitting and very effective, and you could see the reaction of the young people who'd been to them. It was hard watching, but I think they were very useful. So if you can reinstate them, I think that would be great. Okay, we've got Councillor Stewart in the chamber, and then Councillor Cowdy.
Thanks, Convener. Yeah, I just want to discuss about my ward in particular, and thank you for the work to date that's been done out in Burrowfield. I think there has been an improvement. It's not sorted yet, but it is work in progress. I do note in the report it says that there is high visibility patrols been carried out in there. That is one issue that the residents continually come back to me and say that they don't feel that's the case. They feel that they never see anybody out there. In regards to the motorbikes, it has been quiet, but of the last week or so, I think possibly better weather, that might have brought them out of the woodworm. And we are seeing an increased amount of antisocial driving throughout the town centre and around the beach area as well. And again, as I spoke to your colleague from Scottish Fire and Rescue, the MRI is a big concern. We had a report, or I had a report rather, this week that they had phoned about youths on the roof of the building. There was about 6 or 8 youths on the roof, and it was 2 hours before the police were able to attend. It's just a bit of a concern. But, okay.
Yeah, no, thank you for your question and comments there. Delighted to have been part of the work in the community groups up at Burrowfield since my arrival, and to meet some of your kind of key residents up there who raise issues to you. And we will continue to provide high visibility patrols as much as we can when we can. The officers obviously have to factor that in between the demand that they're going to for response calls. But I know that the Community Police Sergeant up there, Caroline Patillo, is very proactive, so we will try and give it as much attention as we can. And again, the same with the youths. It's working together with our partners, both in the council and with the fire service, to try and do some work around these derelict buildings that we've got across Angus that become an attraction to youths to congregate at, and obviously pose significant dangers to them. So that's something we will take away and continue to work towards.
I just
On you go, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. I did mean to say one of the things that was mentioned to me was in regards to the MRI that obviously there's to be a meeting with yourselves and Scottish Fire and Rescue, and they were struggling to obviously get a representative from the police. Now, my understanding is that the community policing officer is on holiday possibly for 3 weeks, and is there a possibility that someone else from Police Scotland could attend that meeting rather than have no one there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. If we can speak off table and you can provide me details of that, and now ensure that we have some representation. There's options within our partnerships team if the local community officer isn't available, but we'll do our best to attend.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Cowdery.
Thank you very much. So yeah, I wanted to say thank you so much for including that section on wildlife crime. It's really heartening when you feed in that manner and you get a great result. So I really appreciate that. It is something that constituents raise with me regularly, and obviously they're very upset by it. So it's good to see that there. It will come as no surprise to anyone that I will continue to advocate for a dedicated wildlife crime officer for the Tayside region. Who is just solely focused on tackling this issue, but I've had great conversations with the police and I completely understand the resourcing challenges of that around staffing. So in the meantime, would it be possible to have detailed updates on Angus specifically in these reports going forward about any wildlife crime that is occurring to give my constituents confidence that the staff structure that is in place at the moment is effectively able to tackle wildlife crime specifically in Angus? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. No, absolutely, that would be my intention going forward, to continue to populate that and cover Angus-specific incidents. And like I say, we will continue to be dedicated to any offences that are a threat to local wildlife. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. Any comments from anyone? Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Just to thank you again for coming along and availing yourselves to us as elected members prior to this meeting. And I would very much welcome an invitation to the next time one of your events are held. I'd be happy to come along to that. Thank you.
Okay, just for myself again, thank you for coming along today. Thanks for the drop-in sessions, which I think are useful, and quite a few elected members take the benefit of going along and having a quiet chat about issues. A comment from myself, really, I would reiterate Councillor Stewart's comments about the support you've given to Burghfield. I know you've attended meetings with council colleagues, and I think that has been useful. And I would certainly say, from what I can see, the problem is not as bad as it was a good few months ago, so thank you for that. So we're asked to note and scrutinise the police report. Are we agreed that we've done that? Okay, thank you. Thanks very much indeed, and you're free to leave. Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll move on now to the audit part of the agenda, and item 6, which is the petition, traffic concerns at Baltic Street, Mill Street, Mount Street and Rose Hill, Montrose, and hand over to Graham Daly.
Thank you, Convener. This report updates members on the actions taken in response to a petition previously considered by committee, submitted on behalf of residents of Baltic Street, Mill Street, Mount Road and Rose Hill in Montrose, raising concerns about traffic issues in the area. The report sets out the findings of investigations undertaken and proposes that appropriate action is now planned, with no further action required beyond that. Following careful consideration of the evidence presented in Appendix 1 and the range of options assessed in Appendix 2 of the report, officers have concluded that the appropriate course of action is to implement advisory directional signage for HGV traffic. The detailed rationale for this recommendation and the views of the local elected members are set out in the report. I am joined by my colleagues from the Roads and Transportation Service, Matt Roberts and Craig Hudson, who are available to assist with any questions on the report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Daly. Any questions from elected members? Don't see any questions. Nobody online. Oh, sorry, Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener. I want to thank Craig Hudson particularly for the work that has been put into this very detailed report. I'm just not sure that it should have come back to Scrutiny and Audit. I think it should have gone to communities. And before, when we've had situations like this, on the basis that we are not a decision-making committee, I would like to propose that this is taken to communities. And I have a seconder in Councillor Bell for this proposal.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Devine. Are you seconding this, Councillor Bell?
Yes, happy to do that.
Okay. So, are there any? There are no questions, and there's a proposal that we refer this to communities, which I think has happened in a number of similar examples recently. So, are we agreed to take that action?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Daly. That was a quick one. Okay, we move on to item number 7, which is the Local Government Benchmarking Framework and the National Benchmark Overview Report 23-24. And is that Gordon Cargill? You're going to present this one. Okay, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, members. Yes, this report presents the key messages outlined in the Improvement Services Local Government Benchmarking Framework, National Benchmarking Overview Report 23-24. Although it's 23-24, it was only issued in March, around March earlier this year. And the report also provides a high-level overview of Angus Council's performance. Within the report, we've also highlighted the intention to go live with a council plan performance dashboard on the council's website during summer 2025. Section 4 of the report is important to stress for context. The LGBF data set provides really the opportunity to reflect on the Council's performance on a range of performance indicators that are monitored and agreed nationally. So it's again, there's a national set of indicators that we look at and can compare against other councils. This is available to services and is utilised as a key source of information. However, there are lots of other sources of data and information that our council services rely on, so it's not the only way to monitor performance, but it is obviously has that national significance. Caution as a cautionary note around, as always, there's a cautionary note around this report where, when interpreting the data, doing that in isolation can be sometimes dangerous. The context around some of the indicators and the information that relates to them, including a broader context, sometimes is important, so that not to jump to conclusions immediately around what the data is telling you, but to consider it in a broader context. Section 5 in the report. The report itself for LGBF is quite a lengthy read, so we thought it was important to just put in a summary of the key messages from a national overview perspective, really picking up the national sort of feedback, if you like, around a number of issues. However, they're all, I think, very similar with experiences in Angus, and I'm sure elected members will be fairly familiar with all the topics that are noted in that section. But really, just so that members can have a quick read of that and just get a sense of that sort of national picture, rather than having to delve into the report in any detail itself. Just going on, pages, bottom of page 67 and then into page 68 goes on to provide a strategic overview based on the change to the indicators over since the base year, which the indicators started being recorded in 2010-2011. So there's quite some, a build-up of good trend information now since that time it started. And it also compares over a one-year period between 2022-23 and 23-24, so you can see the movement within the year as well. As I said or alluded to, there is a significant amount of detail that sits behind that information, and therefore, just to keep this committee in its role as sort of strategic oversight, we've kept the information fairly high level there, just to give that overview of information rather than absolute detail. But you can see the split between the various, there's performance indicators which reflect more qualitative type information. There's obviously cost information, which is like per capita type cost breakdowns, and then there's satisfaction indicators. And overall, we'll have something like 107 measures that are included in LGBF, so it's split between these three categories, and then we'll have the overall one as well. You can see in overall terms, Angus' position on these council-wide indicators shows a declining trend overall on the charts, certainly on the overall one. I think there's more devil in the detail, really, and probably more of a mixed picture as you look into the different categories of the indicators. The one I would highlight is that the satisfaction measures are really interesting, because although the position in Angus looks like it's declining a lot, in terms of comparison to the rankings with other councils, we're actually on the rise. So again, it kind of contextualises the devil being in the detail, because you know, obviously, I think that's telling us that other councils on the satisfaction side are probably declining more than us. You know, and although we are on a decline, we're still, you know, on an upward trajectory compared to others. So I think that's a really interesting one that I just thought I'd highlight to members. The final bit really just, this is really just one element of our overall performance management framework, which was agreed at Council back in December. And directors use this as a tool to undertake more detailed analysis. So where we are identifying performance variation, we do share that with our directorate colleagues, and they are taking that forward for further investigation as required and as they see fit through their work within the performance management framework. And you know, as I said earlier, there is an enormous amount of detail that sits behind it, so it does need that careful consideration in a broader context before arriving at conclusions. Section 7 of the report, the final bit, really just provides a bit more information on the new dashboard proposal. The plan to go live on that summer 2025, as I said. And we were intending to hold an elected member briefing session. We haven't set a date for that yet, and I realise we're approaching the holiday period, so it may be that maybe beginning of August, something around that time, we'll speak to the executive support team and look for a suitable date. And but certainly before that goes into the public domain, we'll be sharing it with the elected members so that they have first sight of what we're proposing on that. That's really it from me as an overview to the report, and happy to take any questions.
Okay, members, any questions for Gordon? Got Councillor Bell. Is that Councillor Stewart? Sorry. Oh, you're pointing at the ceiling.
Is it about to fall in? All right, okay.
Councillor Bell, on you go.
Thank you, Gordon, for that. And I guess I'm just thinking forward around, you know, agendas that are happening in tandem around NHS reform, greater collaboration across the public and third sectors, and partnership working, and how that is going to, I'm sure that'll be quite tricky to demonstrate in a dashboard model. And there's likely, as things change and shape and evolve, we might see dips in performance before things pick up, or vice versa. It's going to be quite tricky, and I just wondered how that is being taken into account as things are developed around the benchmarking framework. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Councillor Bell, for the question. I mean, I think the local government benchmarking framework is very much focused on local authorities, you know, so that is completely focused on that. But I know that other partners will have, you know, their own data sets and such like. So I think the way that is joining up is probably through the community planning partnership world, you know, and I could see that there are, you know, there's also data sets that link to the community planning partners, which are supported by the improvement service. So there's, I think it's community planning outcomes profiles, and they're quite a high level set of indicators. I think there's about maybe 18 or 20 of them, but they do give a very high level strategic view of performance across the area of partnership work. You know, so I think that's certainly something that I think it goes a bit under the radar, to be honest with you, but there is a very good website that holds that information, and I know through discussions with colleagues that our community planning partners are also becoming very focused on data and performance as well. So I think there's a lot more work to do on that on a partnership kind of basis. But LGBF is really just one component of that picture.
Supplementary. So I'm just concerned around duplication of effort, and that all the outcomes that everyone is monitoring are congruent, I guess, and not giving everyone too much work. So yeah, I'm really keen to see that it's holistic. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Any comments? Comments? I'll make a comment. Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry.
Yes, thank you, convener. I did try to dip into the national dashboard, and it's not that easy to work yourself way around it. So I would be very pleased and appreciate a training session at some point. Thank you, Gordon.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that I did have a quick look at the drilling into the national dashboard. I think it's quite interesting. You can put in your council, you can see how it compares to the national and your local family of councils. I think there's quite a lot of good information there if you take the time to look at it. And I certainly am looking forward to dashboard. I think that is the way to go in the future. So really keen to see that, and yeah, we're looking forward to training. I think the summary of key messages in section 5 is for I guess many of us fairly familiar stuff. We know these are the issues impacting on local government and how tough a time we've had over the last sort of 5 to 10 years. But it's good just to summarise some of this. But yeah, I think it's a good report. I think if members have got time to drill into that national detail, it's quite interesting. And so we've been asked to note, scrutinise and note, and I think we've done that here. So if that's so agreed to that, thank you. Okay, we move on to item 8, the Corporate Counter Fraud Review, and ask Cathy Wiley to present this paper.
Thank you, convener. This report is a summary of the work that's been undertaken by the counter fraud team during the last 12 months or up to the 31st of March in 2025. I'll just highlight a few of the things. You can obviously see the detail there, but there's a number of areas that the team work in. The first one at 5.3 is just noting that there have been 18 investigations concluded during the year, and as well as those, there's an amount of advice that is provided on a regular basis to various services when they get in touch with the counter fraud team. Another area where we spend quite a lot of our time is on council tax. That's one of the areas that SIPA has identified as being a high-risk area for councils, and we do undertake proactive work there in terms of electronic data comparison within our own data sets, but also we're currently in the process of undertaking a review of information that we've received from a credit reference agency, and the results of that work is to identify primarily where we have exemptions that have been awarded that should no longer be in place. And in the last year, just over £76,500 has been recovered in terms of discounts that have been discontinued where they're not applicable anymore. The next thing is the National Fraud Initiative. That takes place every 2 years, and we're currently working our way through the matches that we received at the beginning of this year, and we haven't got anything of great significance to report at this stage, but we will bring a report back to committee in future once we've got the results and we've finished working our way through that information. Tenancy fraud tends to be relatively small, but we do investigate a number of areas when that's brought to our attention. We'll do that in conjunction with housing colleagues, and during the year we had one recovery of a tenancy that had been investigated. We also investigate school placements, and during the year there were 4 prospective school places that were found to have been applied for on false information. The team undertakes fraud awareness sessions with various services, but also through the Council's communication networks, and also through there's an e-learning piece of work in Always Learning that people can access, and it has been drawn attention to in the governance e-learning that goes out every year. So in terms of serious organised crime, we have an action plan which you'll be aware we have reported to committee before. That's being worked through, and there has been involvement with a new local authorities serious organised crime single point of contact network that we're involved with. So going forward, we'll continue to do all of these things, but in addition to that, we've also got the new Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act 2023, which has a requirement on organisations to prevent fraud, and Ewan and his team are just working through what that means and making sure that we are ready for anything that needs to be done in terms of making sure that we're complying with that legislation. So Ewan was in the call to be able to answer any questions if there was anything, but he's just messaged me to tell me he's been thrown out of this, so I don't know if he's got back in yet or not, so he may or may not be here to answer questions. Thank you.
Okay, are we open to questions? I've got Councillor Bell, and we may or may not have Ewan Ritchie on the call if you want detail.
Thank you. I was actually going to bring this question up in a subsequent paper, but it's relevant here. So if Ewan isn't here, I can ask it again if we're stuck. So thank you for that, Cathy. So on page 70, you say that the counter-fraud team is resourced to meet the demand for counter-fraud services with a current capacity of 3.3 full-time equivalent. But there, on page 115, in item 9, the team is down 0.6. And I just wondered, given the demand and the workload, when will the decision be reached about the review of that, and how pressing is it? It sounds like you need the capacity. Thanks.
So Ewan has given me information about his thoughts on that, and I have not managed to get to that yet. So it's imminent when I get to review that. I think what we're looking at is it will not impact on the reactive work that we do. We will still undertake that, but there might be some impact on the proactive work that we do, in that will be undertaken at a slower pace if we don't replace that 0.3 of a person. Is that?
Yeah, I'm thinking as well about pressure on the team generally without that, because it can be quite stressful. So I wondered if you could maybe let us know when the plan is reached. Thanks.
So I will be able to bring that back to the next committee, because we will have made a decision before that.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Devine.
Thanks, Convener. Cathy, you raised, well, you highlighted the employee and corporate fraud. I can't remember what it was like in the last reporting period, but 18 seems quite high. Is that higher than usual? And some of the things in 5.4 seem quite serious. So it would be interesting just to hear a little more about that. And, you know, if people have been found and they've been given some support, or however it's been dealt with, that would be useful for us to know, I think.
I'm assuming that Ewan is not in the call at the moment. So I don't think that number is unusual in comparison to what we normally have. I don't have the figure for last year here with me right now, but I can get that to you. But I don't think that 18 is unusual. In terms of how these are undertaken, there would be support offered to people if that was the most sensible way to move forward, depending on what the issues that had been investigated were. But you'll see in the report that we do sometimes take some of these items to disciplinary. I don't have the numbers here of how many of those 18 have resulted in disciplinary, but again, I can get that information and give you that if necessary.
can perhaps supply that offline maybe afterwards. Yeah.
Yep, that would be helpful. Thank you.
And Councillor Gregg.
Thank you, Convener. Just off that last one, I'm not sure whether you'll have the answer to this, Cathy, or perhaps the Chief Exec will, but with regards to 5.3, just as sort of a bit of comparison, how many employees do we have throughout the council, which might sort of suggest that 18 is quite a low number?
Someone needs to know the number of employees we've got. Is it about 4,000 or something like that? To give it a bit of context.
I have a couple of people gesticulating in the corner. I think Mr. Lorimer wants to come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I wasn't given high fives. I was saying in terms of total numbers of staff, I think it's just below the 5,000 mark, but that's a mixture of full-time and part-time staff. So hopefully that gives a sense of scale. I can also, because I happened to look back to last year's equivalent report, it was 21 investigations last year to compare to the 18. I was able to do that because I was sitting in the corner. Thank you.
So I think that figure of 18, well, it sounds a lot in relation to the number of employees, and comparing with last year's figure is, it's in the same ballpark as last year. So, any further questions on that report? Any comments? Okay, I don't see. Okay, Councillor Shepherd.
Yeah, just thanks for the report. And in this climate, it's maybe more people are tempted. It's just reassuring to know that we've got all this in place. Given like the police report with the increase in shoplifting, it's probably more important than ever, the work that you're undertaking. So thanks for that, Cathy.
I want to be careful what I'm saying here, but yes, I had a constituent who was, I think the authority, the council thought that they had underpaid council tax because they were claiming a single person discount, and I can understand how they came to that conclusion, because I helped my constituent take that case back to the council. But in fact, it was a person who was quite elderly, was definitely living on their own, but there was data around which suggests that it might have been somebody else in the house. So it is good to see that those checks being done. In this case, the person was perfectly okay, but I can understand that we've got processes we follow, and that does provide a bit of security that discounts aren't being obtained incorrectly. So it's good to see that happening. So we're asked to review and scrutinise this report and note the results of the self-assessment on Appendix 1. Are we happy we've done that? Okay, thanks very much indeed. Okay, we move on to paper 9, which is the internal audit activity activity update, and also back to Cathy Wiley for that one.
Thank you, Convener. This is an update on the reports and the information that has been completed since the last time that we reported to committee, and an update on where we are with the implementation of actions from both the internal audit reports and also any of the counter-fraud reports that require an action plan. There's also a bit of information in here, I think it's section 5, just to let you know that we're intending to reinstate the information that came to committee on a regular basis around the risk register, and that will be reinstated later this year. So coming to the items that are coming to this committee, we've got 6 pieces of work that we're reporting this time round. 4 of them are from the continuous auditing and just bringing that up to date for the full year, and 2 of them are from audits. 5 have substantial assurance and 1 has comprehensive assurance, so it's very good to see that. It's reassuring that we're able to provide that level of assurance. So if I just go, if you just bear with me till I get the page. The first item, well, actually, before I go into this up from page, sorry, my pages are running too fast here to stop them. Page 92, you have the table that presents the full plan for the year, so you can see that the majority of items that are included in there have been completed. There are a few there that are still not completed, but we're hopeful that most of these, if not all of them, will be able to be reported to the September committee, and I'll say a bit more about them in my next report. In terms of the items that we're reporting this time round, the first one is around the payroll for March 2025, where we look at the top 10 payments that have been made, and that was all satisfactory in terms of the queries that we had around those. In terms of duplicate payments from January to March 2025, we are beginning to see a bit of an increase here. In January we had 2 duplicate payments, in February there was 1, and then in March we had 9 duplicate payments. You may recall that in some of the previous reports we've also had a number of duplicate payments. Most of these have either been repaid or we've got credit notes for them, and the other ones are being actively pursued. But you'll see that there was one in amongst that 9 that was for 122,000, and that has been repaid. All of these items are as a result of invoices being processed twice. The system should prevent that from happening, and so we're working with staff there to try and identify what is happening that shouldn't be happening, that's allowing these to be processed, to try and make sure that that isn't happening again in future. When we do the duplicate payment check-in, we're looking mostly at what's happening within a month, although we do check in the months just prior. But there's also a catch-up done as part of the National Fraud Initiative, which may identify if there are anywhere the invoices have been processed several months apart. If we've missed them in our testing, that would come up in that. So again, it's a bit like the one we looked at previously. In the context of the number of payments we're processing, it's not a very large number, but as we can see there, the amount of money can be quite high. We also looked at the creditor's same person registration and authorisation. We looked at the whole year from April 2024 through to March 2025. We did identify some instances where the same person had processed the invoice and then authorised the payment. All of those were explained satisfactorily. There weren't any fraudulent instances within that, but the reason for those had been errors and also some system issues which had meant that the same person had had to make that authorisation. We took printouts from the IT systems which showed accounts that had never been logged into and some where there hadn't been anyone active in the account for the last 21 days. When we review these, there's a number of these which are legitimately included in there, but there are a few where we've gone back to the services and to IT for those to be further investigated and to be closed if these accounts are no longer required. The next item was the audit on travel and subsistence expenses. This looked at expenses for employees within the council and in Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, but also those submitted by elected members. You'll see we've got substantial assurance for this area. There are a number of recommendations here. A lot of these have already been implemented, including the one which was a priority one recommendation, which was around making sure that everyone was properly recording the receipts for the expenses that they were claiming, and to make sure that managers were checking that when they were approving the expense claims. The next item is the external placements for children. This was looking at the processes and procedures around the administrative systems for procurement of external places for children and the budget management arrangements, because as you can see within the background information here, the costs here have increased significantly over the last few years. There was other work going on around this area, and we did coordinate with that to try and make sure that there was a minimum of duplication within the work. And we only have 2 recommendations from this report, which are around making sure that guidance that was in draft is finalised, and also that all of the evidence for the decision making is properly recorded within the systems. The final section of my report is around the recommendations that are open. We have 42 open recommendations here. There were 47 open when we last reported this in April. that doesn't necessarily mean that only 5 have been closed. We may have added some during the period as well. But I'm not particularly concerned about the number of actions that are outstanding. We do have a significant number in there which relate to risk management and to performance management, which I'll say a bit more about in my next report. But happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Convener. Thank you, Cathy. My question's around the external placements for children, which is very worrying for me from the point of view of, is this the right place for the child to be rather than the cost? And I know that's not your wheelhouse, but can you correlate, do you have the data available for how many children will be contained within these figures for each of the years? Has the number of children gone up so much, or is it the cost of the care?
I don't have that information here. I don't know if there's someone else who would be able to do that. I think that the cost of the care is a significant part of that impact. But Catherine, are you wanting to comment on this?
Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. So you will be aware that the Chief Social Officer brings an annual report, and I think if we look at that, you'll see that there's a trend over time in both directions. So both there is an increase in the number of individual children requiring external placements, and also a substantial increase in the cost of each individual placement. Just to reassure you that the decisions taken about which placements for which child are very much practice-based, but the bit that Cathy's team have brought to the endeavour is to make sure that that is as efficient a process, and that decisions are timious and reviews are timious, so that we've got assurance around the technical kind of components of it as well as the practice components. Thank you.
Okay, any further questions? Any comments? Okay, I don't see any. Okay, so here we're asked to consider a note that it's planned to reinstate the risk measures shortly. So is that agreed? Okay, thank you. We're moving on to item 10, which is the Internal Audit Annual Report and Review of Corporate Governance. That's item 10. Back to Cathy Wiley.
Thank you. I'll just try and draw attention to the areas that the standards require me to bring to your attention and not go through the detail of the whole report, although the report includes the information that supports the conclusions that I've reached. At the bottom of page 107, you'll see my opinion, which is that, in my opinion, the Council has a framework of controls in place that provides reasonable assurance regarding the organisation's governance framework, effective and efficient achievement of objectives, and proper arrangements are in place to promote value for money. Arrangements for the management of key risks require improvement. I'll say a bit more about the risks element in a minute. The other things that I look at are the local code of corporate governance and the scheme of governance is adequate and effective, and although there are some areas for improvement, the code is complied with in all material respects. In terms of risk management, that remains an area that requires improvement. There was an audit done last year and there were a number of actions agreed from that during the year. For a number of reasons, that hasn't been able to be taken forward as timiously as we would have liked, and there are still 9 of those recommendations outstanding to be completed. There's quite a lot of work has happened in the period since the end of March in terms of the new risk register coming up to the last Scrutiny and Audit Committee, and also a workshop around risk appetite has taken place, which is a really important item for taking the risk management forward. And the expectation is that the remainder of these these actions around risk management will be completed by the end of June, which will be really good to see. The other thing that has happened during the year is that there has been all of the service risk registers have now been put into Pentana for them to be able to be actively monitored in there, which is good to see, and that will hopefully tie in with some of the performance monitoring information that's now also going to be more routinely used in Pentana, so that it all ties together. The other areas, just to confirm to you, are that the Internal Audit Service is compliant with the public sector internal audit standards, and that although the resources during the year were reduced from the established capacity, we did replace 2 members of staff near the beginning of the year, and I'm content that the capacity that we've had during the year has been sufficient to allow me to discharge my duties in terms of the requirements of the standards, but also in order to be able to give my annual opinion today. The staff involved in each of the internal audits have been independent of the areas under review, and the performance indicators that we have, in addition to the compliance with the standards, also show good practices being adhered to within the Internal Audit Service. So if you just bear with me a moment, I'll just come down here. So I'm going to page 119, if I think that's where I'm going, yeah. So on page 119 at paragraph 35, there's some information about the items that are not finished from the plan this year. We've got 3 items that are being planned at the moment. There are a number of items, another 3 where the audits are in progress, and 3 where we have draft reports issued to the services, but which have still to be finally agreed with action plans completed for those, and these ones should be reported to the next committee. But the majority of the control objectives that we have looked at during the year, as you saw earlier on, have been either substantial or comprehensive assurance provided, and you can see from the table that we've got on page 121 that there was only one limited assurance report that came to committee during the current year, which was around performance management. There's been quite a lot of activity there. We've got a new performance management framework that's been implemented, and Gordon said a bit about that earlier on when he was talking about performance management. We do still have 3 actions from that report to be implemented within services, and actually it pans out as 10 actions within the tables, because the same action is repeated across a number of services. So although 10 sounds a lot, it's only 3 things, but they need done in a number of places. So the other areas, risk management I've already talked about, and IT business continuity was another area which had limited assurance last year, where we still have a number of actions that need to be completed before that's completely addressed. I don't think there's anything in particular that I need to draw attention to in terms of corporate governance or risk management, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has around the detail within the report. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for Cathy there? Perhaps if I can just ask you, maybe just for the benefit of the committee, that to explain the issues with the risk management and where we're going with that at the moment, because that would be useful, I think, for people to know something about.
I can do, but I'm wondering whether Mr. Lorimer might prefer to do that, since it's
okay. Thank you.
It's taking it
Thanks,
forward.
Thanks, thanks, convener. Good afternoon again. Yeah, in relation to risk management, a lot of work been going on over the last several months. As Cathy's report outlines, we're not where we wanted to be. I did bring a report to this committee back in April, giving an update. I think I also provided an assurance at that point that the actions from the audit that was undertaken last year would be completed by the end of June. I'm pleased to say that we're definitely on track to achieve that. There are some of the actions which are of an ongoing nature, so monitoring around the risk monitoring group will continue as an ongoing thing. But key things that have been done are around the risk appetite, which Cathy mentioned. We were updating the risk management strategy. I have a draft of that now available, and meeting later this week with a support officer from Zurich, our professional advisors in this area, to finalise that. So we're actually in fairly good shape, I would say, in terms of meeting the deadlines that were set. It's taken a lot of work to get there. We will still have to do work to embed risk management fully within the council. That has been a long-standing challenge, but I think we're in a much better place. And I do plan to bring a full update on the new strategy and all the guidance and the risk appetite. That will come back to this committee in the first cycle after the recess. So I hope that provides a bit of reassurance, Convener.
Yes, thanks very much indeed, Ian. That is reassuring to know, and I think it's good for the committee to hear that. Yep, thank you. From anyone? Okay, we're asked here to note and provide commentary. Are we agreed that we've done that? Okay, thanks very much indeed. Item 11, which is Scrutiny Audit Committee Self-Assessment and Annual Report, and that's back to Cathy Wiley again.
Thank you. You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to say very much about this. This is the report that summarises the work that's been done by the committee for the last year for reporting up to the council, and it's really just an opportunity for you. I know there are a few new members, but there are a significant number of continuing members within the committee at the moment who will know whether this report accurately reflects the self-assessment that you undertook earlier this year and also the work that's been done. And it's an opportunity, if there's anything that you think needs to be changed, this is the point that we can discuss that, or just to agree that this can go forward to council after the recess.
Okay, well, this is one for people who've been on the committee for the last year. So any comments there, any questions? Okay. Councillor Fotheringham.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Convener, sorry. No, I think Mrs Wiley's said the right thing. I think it's a very substantial report, and I personally feel it should just be put forward now to the Council. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that. As the former convener, thanks for that reassurance. So we're asked here to review the draft annual report for the year to 31st March, determine whether any amendments are required in the light of issues discussed at this meeting, and note the annual report will be co-signed by the previous and current convener and will be submitted to full council after the recess. Are we agreed to that? Okay, thanks very much indeed. Now move on to item 12, which is Corporate Governance Annual Review and Draft Annual Governance Statement for the year to 31st March 2025. That's over to the Chief Executive.
Thank you very much, Convener. Just pop your mic off. So I'm really pleased to present the Corporate Governance Annual Review and the Draft Annual Governance Statement for 24-25, reflecting our ongoing commitment to strong governance and continuous improvement in this area. I'm going to hand over to Mr Cargill, who's been instrumental in pulling this report together today, who's going to speak to the detail of the report and the associated action plans. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this report advises of the outcome of the annual review of compliance with the principles of good governance and presents that draft annual governance statement for consideration. It also provides wording for the draft letters of assurance from the committee to the Angus IGB and Angus Alive. Section 5.1 of the report highlights the various sources of assurance, including the work of the Corporate Governance Officers Group, who, on behalf of the Chief Executive, conduct an annual self-assessment of compliance with the principles of good governance. And Section 5.2 highlights the overall conclusion from 24-25 is that the Council demonstrated that governance arrangements and the framework within which the Council operates are sound and operating effectively. Section 6.2 of the report references Appendix 1, which incorporates the draft annual governance statement, which will be duly incorporated into the draft annual accounts once they are concluded by 30th of June. This is a draft, I've said this before at committee, that still has to reflect the governance assurances from the group accounts, so other partners that are involved in that require their assurances before we can conclude. And also, of course, any comments that the committee itself feel appropriate to comment on in terms of the draft statement, we welcome that, and also any other material changes until such time as the accounts are concluded, which is normally September. If there are any material changes, then we would be obliged to include any relevant information also in the final statement. Section 7 provides an update on the corporate improvement actions that have been identified and are included in the action plan, and these are in appendices 2, and there's a best value thematic audit update in appendix 3. So I'll just quickly run over these just to give you an update on each of the actions. In appendix 2, so starting on page 1, top of page 155 of the papers, excuse me. You'll see there is an action actually. The first action is completed, but the second action down is the risk management improvements, which Mr Lorimer has just provided an update on. I think the percentage of 45% looks to be a bit on the cautious side, to be honest with you. I think that could possibly be a bit higher, but certainly there's assurance that the work is in progress to complete the due date. For I think the risk audit actions were 30th of June, and there's a further piece of work to do before the 31st of July. The next action is around to develop a standardised approach to operational schemes of delegation. So you remember that legal colleagues led by Alison Watson's team had developed the main update to the scheme of governance, which was agreed at committee a year or so ago, and then updated after that. This is the kind of the roll-on from that, where we're trying to get standardised schemes of operational schemes of delegation in place for all directorates to make sure that we've got a consistent approach to that. So legal have continued their work on that and prepared the templates, and are now supporting colleagues to complete that work and put their schemes of governance and schemes of delegation in place across the council. That work's not quite concluded. There was a due date. We've got 27th of June 25, so we've not quite achieved that yet, but the request is to extend that to slightly longer, to the end of September. I think there's 1 or 2 directorates still to do it, but I think that's a realistic time frame to set for that. The next one on the top of the next page was around business critical activities, and this was something that we'd identified from last year's review of the governance framework. And in terms of progressing it, we saw when we came to look at it, it was very much linked to the national power outage work that was going on around identifying business critical activities, which is being led by our resilience team. So the latest update on that is that work is ongoing. The completion for that is aimed at the end of January 2026, so we're looking to extend that date to that time as well, and that will feed through consideration by CLT, obviously from a resilience and incident management type plan to make sure all our ducks are in a row on that, but we need that time frame to do that. The next one is around the policy reviews, which again was something we picked up at last year's review, that there was some inconsistencies around keeping information bang up to date. You know, some people were very diligent in doing it, others not so. So we've put a system in place whereby we're making sure that all the information that's on the council's website in terms of policies and strategies and such like is well recorded, documented in our system. And then when the time comes to update it or refresh it, then there's a trigger within the system to ensure that colleagues are doing that. So again, we've had support from legal colleagues on that too, to help with that, and a special the document centre system. So we're coming up with a good system there, but it's just going to take a wee bit longer to get it finalised, and we're aiming for the end of December on that one. Final one on that section is just around it kind of links possibly a bit to Cathy's findings on the duplication of payments to possibly to a point whereby through the process in the past with authorisations have been done traditionally through like order books where you have a wet signature and that kind of approach. Whereas moving to the digital age, a lot of our authorisations and such like now are through just digital process, you know, digital systems. You press the button and it goes to the next person and so on. And what we're finding that the checks around making sure that the right authorisations in terms of the personnel were in place to be making the right, to coming in at the right stage and such like, we're needing to do more checking to make sure that for example, when somebody's left the organisation, that their name's not still on the list, or somebody's joined the organisation, that they are on the list, you know. So we felt there was a wee bit more control needed around that. So that's what that action is in relation to. Final bit on the Appendix 3 is really around their ongoing actions. In terms of the best value actions that came out of the 2022 best value audit, they've all been completed. And these actions that are in that Appendix 3 now are the remaining actions from the best value thematic audit, which was last year, which was around digital skills and workforce planning. And you can see that the skills programme is still, you know, a fair bit off in terms of March 2026. And also shared services is an area of ongoing work, really, where we, you know, explore opportunities as and when they arise, and explore them when we think they're valuable to us. So that's still in progress within the time frame. So that gives you a fairly detailed overview of those actions. And then finally, just to reiterate that the Section 8 of the report provides an update on the wording for the draft letter of assurance to IJB and Angus Alive, so that we can, because we provide services to them, basically confirming to them that we have appropriate governance arrangements in place, and they can take their assurance from that. So that's the overview, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Convener. Thanks, Gordon. Lots in there. I'm going to try and squeeze in 2 questions before anyone stops me. Page 149, there's mention of the senior management review, and I just wondered if we had a time frame for completing that. And the other one is on page 157. It's the very last action around shared services. I remember talking about this pre-2017, and given the technology is better now, I'm hoping that if we're sharing staff, then we'll maximise use of hybrid, so that people aren't travelling unnecessarily, both for the environment but also for additional impact on things like childcare costs, and just the inconvenience of having to drive, you know, out with our local authority area and vice versa for Dundee staff. So just a bit of comfort around that, please. Thanks.
Convener, if I can take that first question from Councillor Bell. Thank you very much, Councillor Bell. So I have been keeping leaders of groups informed as to the progress. There is still some work to do going through our HR processes, but we still have continuing arrangements in place to cover all critical elements of our management structure, and we'll report back in due course. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And
yeah, I'll pick up that second question.
Page 157, shared services.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of shared services that we're actually doing. We've just compiled a list fairly recently, prompted by the Improvement Service, who are looking for a sense of that. So it depends on specifics, probably, Councillor Bell, you know, in terms of what the shared service actually is. But I think where we can work, you know, most effectively and efficiently through virtual means without travelling and incurring all those extra costs and such like, then I think we would be, you know, we'll have that sort of embedded within our own council's way of working. So, you know, I think we'd be looking to deploy that wherever possible.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Any comments? I don't see any comments from anyone. Okay, in terms of our actions here, we are asked to consider the 24-25 draft annual governance statement, Appendix 1, provide any comments. Note that the draft annual governance statement will be included in the Council's unaudited annual accounts. Consider the updates to Corporate Governance Action Plan and the Best Value Thematic Action Plan, Appendixes 2 and 3. Approve the extension of the completion dates on specific corporate governance actions as set out in section 7.1. Notes that the draft annual governance statement will be kept under review and updated as necessary. and authorises the convener of the Scrutiny Audit Committee on behalf of the committee to write to Angus Health and Social Care Integration Joint Board and Angus Alive confirming the adequacies and effectiveness of the Council's governance arrangements. Are we agreed to that? Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 13, which is the Corporate Governance, Local Code of Corporate Governance 2025, and that's back to the Chief Executive.
Thank you very much, Convener. Again, I'm pleased to present this revised Code of Corporate Governance 2025, the annual update reaffirming our commitment again to strong governance and reflecting current best practice. Mr Cargill is going to take us through the detail of that report and the updates provided. Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Gordon.
Yes, I don't intend to say an awful lot more. The report is a fairly straightforward report. It's an annual update we provide the committee based on all the, if you like, the documentation plans and such like that we rely on to provide our assurance. Those are linked in the appendix to the various the 7 various themes that represent the good governance model, and really there's no material changes to any of the information, really more of an updating of hyperlinks to the latest information and such like, and yeah, it's quite relatively straightforward, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? Okay, Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously new to the committee and at risk of asking a silly question, but the specific recommendation that we're asked to approve is to the Scrutiny and Audit Committee reviews and approves the revised local code of corporate governance. But if you go into the appendix, there's no indication of what the revisions actually are. And if you go into the code of governance, there's not actually, as far as I understand it, much information as to say what the code is, you know, in that paper. The way the paper's presented, we get the table that tells you what delivering good governance looks like, but it doesn't. I understand in the explanation there's people meet and things like that, but it's not the clearest of documents. Now I know we've looked at this in other papers and things, but in terms of this report in isolation, it feels a little bit kind of like sparse. And then you get into the evidence section, which all the hyperlinks are in. Should all of those things meet all of the criteria? Should A, B, C, D, E, F, G be actually all ticked? Is this the code changes or just the things that are under review or anything like that? And then the final question on this one, or the final point on this one, sorry, is that the hyperlink for financial and change plan puts you to, or certainly for me anyway, puts you to a URL that doesn't work. So that probably just needs slightly updated. But that's where I'm at on this, and I look forward to being told I'm daft.
Okay, are you going to attempt to answer that question or these questions?
I wouldn't dare do that. Yeah, thanks, Councillor MacDonald. It's actually really helpful. I know you said you're new to the committee, so it's really helpful having a fresh pair of eyes actually on this. To be honest with you, because we do tend to just, we churn these things out, and I suppose the wheel that's on page 162, I think, does provide really the backdrop to the 7 sort of principles that we're trying to demonstrate that we're complying with. And through that, we've tried to make the document, I suppose, as succinct as we possibly can do, to avoid. We did have a previous iteration of this where we had quite a lot of words in it, and there was an awful lot of duplication. So the theory was that if we can try and make it less duplication and use more of the sort of the matrix approach, which we've got in the appendix, to show where the bits of our policies and such like actually fit with the requirements of the code, that would provide a better analysis, if you like, and a better way of showing how we're complying. But I do take your point that if you feel that we're light in terms of explanation maybe in what we've done there, then we could absolutely take another look at that. Happy to do that. And Also, if you felt there was something there in terms of training, or have a further session with members of the committee, because I know now it's different members or slightly different members on the committee. I'd be happy to have a further session on that, even if it's just half an hour to run over that in a bit more detail, if you'd find that helpful. But certainly take your comments on board as well.
Okay, thanks for that. I think Mr Lorimer wants to come in as well on this one.
Yeah, thanks, Convener, and thanks, Councillor MacDonald, for the question. I think that's reasonable. As Gordon says, it's good to have a fresh set of eyes on this. There is new guidance. There's an addendum to the Code of Practice, which is due to come into effect for effectively the current year or the end of this year. So that might be an opportunity for us to do a little bit of further engagement with members of the committee, whether that's training or briefing, or just trying to bring people up to date with the impact of that new guidance. And that might give us an opportunity to see kind of where all this fits together as an offer in response to your question. So I think that's maybe a good opportunity to do that at that point.
Yeah, thanks very much, Ian. And I think Cathy wants to come in here as well.
Yeah, it's just to say that if you look at these across the piece, there are lots of different ways that these are presented in the different councils. I think it's important, the wheel that is shown at the beginning of that is the areas that all of the code should cover. I think the table that we've got in here, I think is really useful to be able to see which areas each of the different policies and plans and what have you that we have apply to, in terms of which areas of the governance code they help us to comply with. And I think that's a really useful table, which if you didn't have that table, it would be quite hard, I think, to be able to link everything together. I think that's really useful.
We're so kind of agreeing that some training in the next few months would be helpful on this one for members of the committee, bearing in mind there are quite a few new people, such as Councillor MacDonald and myself. Any other questions or comments on this one? Okay, right. We are asked to recommend that we review and approve the revised Local Code of Corporate Governance 2025. Is that agreed? Okay, thank you. And we're now moving on to the last paper, which is paper 14, the Regulation of Investigatory Powers Scotland Act 2000 Quarterly Report. And I think that's over to Alison Watson. Over we go.
Thank you, Convener. Just for any new members to the committee, to explain that this is the quarterly report that is required to go to Scrutiny and Audit Committee to provide details of any covert surveillance that has been authorised for the Council to undertake in accordance with the 2000 Act. This report advises members that there has been one authorisation granted for surveillance in the period covered by the report, and officers are asked to note this authorisation. Thank you.
Okay, can we agree to note that? Okay, well, thanks very much indeed. Just on the 2-hour mark, so wish you a good rest of the day. Thanks for your attendance.
Could we stop the stream?